You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
When I was a teenager, I used to collect the Friday calendar section of the LA Times. Back before, big promotional pushes. Movies had, promotional this and that, but every Friday in the Los Angeles Times, they would take out full-page ads for whatever movies were coming out that day. And I used to collect them. I had tons of them. Every genre pick or, prestige pick, I had stacks and stacks and stacks. And, as you get older, as you get a job and get money and you can afford the actual movie posters and the stuff that you really want, that sort of stuff gets tossed in the trash, It has to go away. But every once in a while, I'll be in the garage, and I've been in the garage quite a bit lately. I'm trying to downsize the enormous amount of pop culture crap that I have out there. And every once in a while, I'll run across one of these sections of the paper for whatever reason I kept, depends on what it was. And, sometimes they would alter the movie poster for the holidays. I remember the poster for Back to the Future 2 features Doc and Marty in the 2015 version of the car. It's very iconic. Around Christmas time, they added Santa Claus behind Doc. That's true. They would do these weird variations. So I ran across one of these, and what's interesting is the number of movies. Like, it's funny, how do you describe this? We all have the memories of the movies that we like and that we went to see in the theater, or sometimes they just get lost in the shuffle. And when you pick up an old newspaper back from the day, you are shocked. You are actually shocked by the number of movies that are out that you don't even hear about anymore. So many movies get lost in the shuffle. And, you go to Target and you look at their selection of Blu-rays and DVDs and what movies they have. And they have a pretty wide selection from all genres of, available movies. But that's only a section of the movies or selection of movies that actually have sold. And for every copy of Goonies, everybody knows Goonies. Goonies has merchandise, t-shirts. I got a cool Goonies t-shirt for my birthday. There are 3 or 4, 10 movies that you've never even heard of, or you remember, but they're just not in the pop culture mainstream the way Goonies is. Hey, you guys, everybody knows that, right? But a movie that's very similar is Explorers. Instead of going for treasure, they go into space. Or The Gate, or Monster Squad, or any of the other dozens of movies. And there are dozens and dozens of movies from that exact time period that, for whatever reason, don't catch on. They don't latch on to people's psyche, and they don't last. And they just get, everybody has their favorites. Everybody has their guilty pleasure, cult favorites, whatever you want to call it, obscure films. Lord knows I got more than enough for one person. But it is interesting to see what lasts and what doesn't, because the studios put out so many movies. Movie after movie after movie. And it's even worse now because you've got so many smaller independent studios putting out movies. Like, I can remember when Harrison Ford, every movie that Harrison Ford put out, and I've talked about this on the show, was an event. Oh my God, there's a new Harrison. He made one movie a year. He made Working Girl. That's 88. He made Last Crusade. That's 89. He made Witness. That's 90. And then he made The Fugitive. These were big movies. Every one of them a cultural event. Big movies. Air Force One. Harrison Ford movies were prestige, top of the line, expensive movies. right? And then you go to the video store, and all of a sudden, in the late 90s, there's a bunch of movies I never even heard of. And that's because, he starts to fall, and he starts making movies that, that pay the bills. Not that he should have any bills, for God's sake. But there's so many movies that get put out that we don't even remember. Harrison Ford made a movie called The Widowmaker. Him and Liam Neeson are in control of a Russian submarine. Does anybody even remember that movie? Right? Hollywood Homicide. And that's just Harrison Ford. There are every big actor. Look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. Every movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger made after Terminator arguably was a cultural event. Even small stuff like Raw Deal, but then Red Heat, Conan the Destroyer. Is that the second one? No one cares about that one. His cameo in Red Sonja. But after that, with Twins and Total Recall and, of course, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, every Schwarzenegger movie is a major cultural event right up until Last Action Hero. And then he starts to slide a little. His movies are big, but they're not, they're not, everybody's going to go see them opening weekend so we can talk about them. Last Action Hero, I'm the only guy that liked that movie. And this has been going on since the dawn of the studio system, since people started making movies. The difference is that celebrities today sign on for one picture, they make their deal, they make the movie, blah, 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 blah. Back then, actors were put on these contracts, and it was a much more of a movie mill. They made a lot more movies back in the day. And that's because there was no second life for these movies. They had a theatrical run, and that was it. We're talking. If the title of the episode today, we're talking about Casablanca. Casablanca was put out for a theatrical run to make money. That's it. There was no television run. There was no they would re-release it in theaters, but even that's not in this time frame, folks. Not in this time frame. No movie television rights, no VHS, no Laserdisc, no DVD, no Blu-ray, no download, no online, no this. Just theatrical release. So the studio made picture after picture because they have to keep product in the theaters or they don't make money. There's no second stream at all. There's no merchandise. There's no nothing. It's just a movie. So these actors and these movies were made really, really fast. Sometimes 3 weeks, boom, you got a movie. Next movie. And that's why Warner Brothers and Universal have these big studio lots so that they can not have to go on location. Make these movies quick, make them here, make them in Burbank, make them in Universal City, da-da-da-da-da, right? So if you were to look back at a 1942 newspaper, you would see the same thing I discovered in 1985 and 86, and that there's dozens of movies that never caught on, never made it. Now, they could have, in hindsight, these stars in these movies got so big that people would then go back and rediscover them. But a lot of movies are just lost. They're just lost to time, and they're only important to those of us who remember them. You get with your friends, you go, remember that movie? Oh my God, yeah, I haven't thought about that movie in years. But hey, that's not the case with Casablanca. I'm just saying that when they made it, they had no idea they were making arguably the greatest movie ever made. I was reading about it. It competes with Citizen Kane for greatest movie ever made. That's a big deal. Greatest movie ever made? Oh my God. And if I put it on in the living room with my whole family there, they'd all get up and leave. It's black and white. It's slow. Everybody in it is dead. The last actress died this year. And that would be the woman who played Rick's drunk girlfriend at the beginning of the film. But it endures. This is the movie that Hugh Hefner plays once a year at his house. Everybody dresses up and has Casablanca night. And, you think about it like, well, I don't, here's looking at you, kid. I know all that, Everybody knows the taglines. But have you ever sat down and actually watched it? And most people would say no. Most people would go, oh, yeah, no, I'm not going to watch that. I know it's about Casablanca. What is it about? Humphrey Bogart. No, have you ever sat and watched it? Now, this is not the first time I've watched it. As a film aficionado, I am compelled to watch these movies. I watched it today at the behest of Hendel. This is a Patreon-sponsored episode by my good friend Hendel, who he went right to the top. Casablanca, for God's sake. Now, what we're going to talk about, I am just a layman in the Casablanca world. I am not an expert by any means. There are people who have combed over every frame of this movie. That's not what this show's about. We're just going to talk about the movie. I'm talking about how the studio made so many pictures back then. This was just another in a long line. Had they known the cultural significance of this film, they would have saved more from it. Because a lot of there's nothing left of Casablanca. There's one set left, one facade. During the flashback, when they're at the Parisian Cafe, that facade is still up at the Warner Brothers lot. Everything else, gone. Disney claimed it had the plane from the end of the movie, but the plane in the movie is a cardboard cutout, so they couldn't possibly have it. But it's one of those things, again, you never know. You never know if the movie you're making is going to click, is going to be great, or is just going to be lost in the landslide of film. It just goes to show you that nobody knows nothing about the movies. If you ask me, those Transformer movies shouldn't make 10 cents. And yet, they're consistently the number 1 or 2 film of the year when they come out, with a domestic gross of in excess of $400 million. Who's going to see these movies? I have no idea. I have no clue. What makes Casablanca so great? It's hard to pinpoint. Except that with 70 plus years since its release, we get to note all the references and all the movies that owe so much to it. I was struck right at the beginning that without Casablanca, a major portion of Star Wars would not exist. Casablanca is let's get into it. Casablanca opens with a really cheesy shot of the Earth. It's obviously a really cheesy rotating model with a history lesson that this movie was made during World War II. The war is going on, and if you want to get out of Europe and flee the impending Nazi march through, you're going to end up in Casablanca. It's the last stop before you can get out to Lisbon, Portugal, and then on to America if that's what you're going. And it's this weird city of castaways, people who don't have a home. It's being held by the French. It's unoccupied France, so it's actually French soil, and the Nazis have no real power there. They're threatening, but they don't have any real power there. And everybody goes to Rick's, which is the name of the play that the movie was based on, Rick's American Cafe. And Humphrey Bogart is Rick, and he runs this. He runs the cantina, folks. It's the cantina, and this is where Luke Skywalker goes in looking for Han Solo for passage off of Tatooine, passageway to Alderaan. You watch Casablanca, you watch the machinations of what it takes to get out of Casablanca, paperwork, booking passage, getting on there, getting away. It's so Star Wars. It's so Star Wars. It is them getting out of Mos Eisley by the seat of their pants with the Imperials, i.e. the Nazis, right on their tail. So watching it, I'm like, wow, Lucas really borrowed from the architecture, the look. It's in the desert. It's not even subtle, folks. And same thing with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everybody in the film is dressed either like Indiana Jones or Belloc, mostly Belloc. And they're trying to They're trying to, everybody, it's weird. There's a few scenes of tourists, of people getting out, who have their paperwork, who are getting out, who are there on holiday, and they're doing their best to maintain their humanity and their dignity and their civility in this almost Wild West town on the edge of the frontier. You know, everybody coming to Casablanca's got a motive. Everybody in Casablanca wants something. They need something. They got to get out. You know, even Rick's got to get out. Rick, who never puts his neck out for anybody. He says that multiple times in the movie. The first half hour of the movie really hits you over the head that this guy Rick cares about nobody but Rick. You know, he's Han Solo. You know, I'm in it for the money. I'm not in it for your princess. I'm not in it for your cause, right? And when Peter Lorre, who plays this really sleazy kind of underworld guy, and there's a lot of underworld stuff in there. There's even Sidney Greenstreet shows up as the head of the Blue Parrot, who's you read in a lot of Lucas books that's where he got Jabba the Hutt from. He kept telling him Sidney Greenstreet, and there's even a few early models of Jabba that he's wearing a fez, like they were literally making him Sidney Greenstreet. Peter Lorre shows up. Everybody is on the run from the police because 2 Nazi couriers have been killed. We never see them. It doesn't matter. What's important is that they were carrying 2 golden tickets out of Casablanca, right? And Peter Lorre ends up. Now we never get the idea that Lorre killed these 2 guys. It doesn't seem in his nature. What it seems is that he somehow scavenged these transit papers from whoever did do the killing, and he takes them to Rick to hold for safekeeping, and he's promptly arrested and then killed. And that leaves Rick with 2 golden tickets to get out and no idea what to do with them. And so the stage is set, and the Humphrey Bogart playing Rick, he's just fantastic. This is a guy who always looks like the weight of the world is on his shoulders. And in the guise of Rick, it works because Rick is he's the most popular guy in town and the most miserable guy in town. And they're always at odds. He's supposed to be the big party guy, and he doesn't really drink. And he doesn't take a drink until later in the film, and you'll understand why in a second. But he's perfectly cast, and everybody in this film is perfectly cast. And Claude Rains, as the head of the French police, is so amazing in this film. And you know what's good about it is that it contains some of the sharpest, razor sharp wit ever in a movie. The thing is that it's done so lightning fast, bam, boom, 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 that they never like in a modern day movie, they would say a line like in this movie, and then they would look at the camera and kind of, or there'd be one of these bump, musical cues to let you know to laugh. But in this, they spew them out so fast that you almost have to rewind to hear how good they were. And some of them are just brilliant. When the Nazis order Claude Rains to shut down Rick's without a reason, Rick says, "Well, how can you do this?" And he goes, "I can't believe there's gambling here. I'm appalled. I'm shocked to find gambling here." And the guy walks up and goes, "Here's your winnings, sir." And he goes, "Oh, thank you." It's just so quick, and they move right on. They don't dwell on it. They don't give you a moment to laugh. They just keep going, right? The movie is this weird mixture of really good, sharp dialogue and tension. Because everybody, like I said, everybody in Casablanca has got a motive, right? And everybody in Casablanca has a need. And everybody in Casablanca is in danger. The Nazis have arrived. They are in town. And one false move and you're a dead man. One of the key lines in the film is, "Round up the usual suspects." And that's where the 1995 Bryan Singer film got its name, The Usual Suspects. Because everybody in Casablanca is guilty of something. It's just a matter of finding who did what to whom and when. And the stage is set for a really good political thriller. And instead what happens is this guy shows up, and he's a freedom fighter, Laszlo. He's in Casablanca to get out of Europe, to go to America, and to continue to fight against the Nazis. He's legendary. He's done a million things to help the resistance. You know, he's the leader of the rebels. You know, he's Princess Leia. He's got to get out, right? And when he walks in, he's got a woman with him. And watch the scene. Watch the scene where she walks in and sits down, and then Sam, the piano player, and play it again, Sam, which is actually not in the film, but he looks over and you can see in his face, oh man, everything is about to come crashing down. It is such a good moment, and it only has resonance if you're watching it the second, third, or fourth time. Because the first time you're watching the story unfold, you don't know why he's upset. The second time you're like, oh, he knows exactly what is about to happen because he picked up the pieces last time. So Ingrid Bergman shows up as Ilsa, one of the most beautiful women to ever appear in a motion picture. And her and Rick had a fling back in Paris, right at the start of the war. And they made plans to get married, and he asked her to meet him at the train station, and she never showed up. And there she is. And the arrival of Ilsa just wrecks him. And who hasn't had this in their life? Who hasn't had a woman who just destroys you? You have no defense. You can't get out of it. You're just wrecked by the presence of this woman. We've all had this in our lives. And so Rick is he's going to be a host to this guy, but this is a woman that he both loves and despises at the same time because of what she did to him. And poor Sam is like, here we go again. And it manifests itself in the song as time goes by because that's their song. And when Rick walks out and he's playing, he goes, I told you never to play that song, Sam. And Sam basically says, the devil made me do it. And so now we have all of our characters, and we have our problem. Rick's got the golden ticket out. Laszlo needs to get out. Ilsa's here, and Rick wants nothing more than to be with her the rest of his life. He wants to put Laszlo out of the picture and run off with Ilsa. And in a regular run-of-the-mill movie, that's what they would have done. And the reason Casablanca has lasted so long and been so important is that, like Han Solo, sorry to do the Star Wars references, but you know when Han gets his money and takes off, and Leia's like, well, you have your money, that's all it's all about. And Han turns to Luke and he's like, you want to come with us? We could use a good pilot. Can't you see what's going around you, Han? Yeah, going up against that Death Star is not my idea of, it's my idea of suicide. And so all of the overtones are there, and it's up to Rick to become his own hero, to finally battle his demons, because once Ilsa shows up, he's almost drunk the rest of the movie. And his one-liners are superb. But he retreats into the bottle. And there's nothing worse than a nightclub owner drinking his own stock, right? So even Sam is like, look, let's get out of here. Let's go fishing. Put this woman out of your sight. And he can't do it. He makes him play Time Goes By, which is like a knife right in his friggin' heart. So we've got all the walls are now pushing in on Rick. And Rick's the guy that we like. They spend so much time at the top of the movie making us like this rough, gruff, heartless man. And it works. We really like Rick. We want the best for him. We want him to end up with Elsa, even though her being married to Laszlo really puts a kink in that. And if Laszlo's around, he's stealing some guy's wife. It's a testament to Bogart's charm that we like him. And all the supporting characters are just firing on all cylinders. A great sequence where this incredibly beautiful young girl comes to Rick and says, look, we've arranged to get our passports out, but we have no money. And Rick helps them cheat at his own place. It's Star Wars. I knew there was more to you than money. It's such a great scene, and it's the turn of Rick's not all made of granite. He's got a heart. He's human under all of that defense mechanism from what Elsa did to him. It's fantastic, Again, there's overtones of Star Wars, overtones of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you're just caught by what's this guy going to do, and is he going to do the right thing, or is he going to do the thing that we want him to do, because they're two different things. And that's what life's about, right? Life's about not taking the easy road. Life's about hard choices. Life's about doing the right thing, even though it's the very thing that breaks you in half. And letting people go. And severing friendships. You know what I mean? It's tough, man. Really tough. Like, I'm watching this movie, and the other thing that it does, and it's indicative of movies of that period, I talked about the way the dialogue is given. Boom, 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 boom. There's no fancy camera tricks. Boom, the movie is just shot. The other thing that it does is that it gets to the end quick. I'm watching the timer, and 7 minutes before this movie ends, they still haven't resolved anything. Everything, at the 7-minute mark, everything is still up in the air. We don't know who's going to do what, who's going to make it out of Casablanca alive, or whatever. It's the same with North by Northwest, if you've ever seen that. It takes the last 15 seconds to end and give you a resolution. That's what movies did back then. If they made this movie today, they'd have the ending, and whoever got in the plane would fly off, and then it'd be 20 more minutes of walking around or whatever. Movies are totally different these days. That's why people have trouble watching these old films, but you got to hang on. Because by not watching older movies, you are doing yourself a disservice. Black and white doesn't mean bad. It just means different. They colorized Casablanca in the 80s. Didn't improve the movie. Didn't need to. I don't think you could even find that colorized version anymore. Who cares? So at the end, Ilsa comes to Rick and begs him to give the papers and let Laszlo go out, and she'll stay with him. First, she pulls a gun on him, which is a great sequence, and he just, pull the trigger, aim for my heart, you'll be doing me a favor, because he can't live without her. And then she confesses her love for him and says, look, we can be together. All we have to do is get Laszlo on that plane out of Casablanca. And you can see Rick like, this is it. This is what it's building to. Now, he's already made arrangements to have Laszlo arrested, thrown in jail, and then him and Elsa take off. But either one of those scenarios ruins the movie, ruins his character. Because at the end, he wants Laszlo and Elsa to fly off together, and he's going to stay. He's going to face whatever consequences are waiting for him. He holds Claude Rains at gunpoint, makes him sign the papers, and at the very end, shoots the Nazi commandant as the plane takes off into the sky. It's amazing. It's so well done. There is no fat in this movie. There's no shoe leather where people are just walking around. Every scene counts. Every scene builds to the next one. It is an hour 42 minutes, and it is exactly as long as it needs to be. You can't say that about a lot of movies. Can't say that about, there's hardly any movies you can say that about, that they're that flawless, that you couldn't trim a few minutes here and there. Casablanca's flawless. Totally flawless. Yeah, sure, the effects of the plane at the end are a little bad, but who cares? By that time, I was crying, so it didn't matter to me. When he goes, here's looking at you, kid, at the end, knowing he is sending her away, your heart breaks. If your heart isn't breaking, you're not human. If you love something, set it free. And this is the ultimate display of that. Rick is setting her free and letting her go. And that is tough, man. That is really tough. You ever been at the wedding of somebody that you had a crush on or you had a relationship with? You watch him marry somebody else? There it is on film. He knows that Laszlo has amazing work to do, that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Star Trek, and he's letting him go. And then Claude Rains, when everybody shows up, says, look, the Commandant's been shot. Round up the usual suspects. Just how the movie began. It bookends, like Lucas says, they rhyme, and him and Bogart walk off into the mist, talking about getting Bogart out of Casablanca because he has sold the cafe. He's out. He needed to cast off everything that he had been so that he could be somebody else. A better person. He could be the Rick that he was before Ilsa broke his heart. That's what he was striving for. By doing all of the things that he did, by letting her go, he was trying to find in himself, and I'm pointing because I'm visual, trying to find in himself that guy he used to be. The guy that Ilsa destroyed. And the sacrifice that he makes at the end allows him to do that. And that's what being a man is. It's about sacrifice, you know? Sucks, man. We want him so bad to be on that plane with her. And alas, it's not to be. And I'm not an expert on Casablanca. Not by any stretch. There are many men who know much more than I do. Trivia and this and that. Just telling you what I feel about it, you know. It's such a great movie. And it really sucks you in. And putting those Star Wars and Raider stuff on is my way of like getting myself into it. But I don't need it. Lord knows I don't need it. Because by the end, a good movie can just break your heart. And this one really breaks your heart, man. What a great, great flick. Want to thank Hendel for recommending it and for sponsoring on Patreon this episode. We can't do the show without you guys. Thank you so much. We have more Patreon episodes in the pipeline. If you haven't seen Casablanca, what are you waiting for? Sit down. Watch it. Turn your phone off. And watch one of the greatest movies ever made. And thank God they never remade it or tried a sequel. They tried it in book form and that, and yeah, no one wants that. Some movies are better just left untouched, and Casablanca is one of them. Damn, what a good movie. I might watch it again. That's how good it is. I might watch it again. And I just watched it. Hey, I'm heading out to Queen Mary's Dark Harbor tonight. I have not been to the Queen Mary for Halloween since 1988. Can you believe that? Were you even alive in 1988, folks? So it should be interesting, and I'm sure Rachel and I will do an episode quickly to talk about our trip to Queen Mary. Thanks to our good friend Colleen for hooking us up with that for my birthday. Truly amazing and blessed. I do have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to friends, and I am totally grateful for that. We had a great time yesterday at Disneyland, thanks to my friend Noel. We were there because I wanted to see the Silver Lake Sisters at the Tower of Terror. You know, the Tower of Terror at California Adventure is going away in February. And for Halloween, they decided to put up the, up to this point, never seen Silver Lake Sisters as a real band. And as a trio of ladies, they were fantastic. We watched their whole set in the lobby of the Hollywood Tower Hotel. So it was really cool. Couldn't ride the ride. I have a feeling that a ride like Tower of Terror, because I have a slight case of vertigo, might put me in the hospital. So we did not ride the ride. But it's beautiful ride. I wish I could ride it, but I am unable to. But I did stand in the lobby and watch the great show. So thanks to Noel for that. We had a great time. We had Bengal barbecue. I had a Frappuccino on Main Street, and we just hung out and watched for like over an hour. It was fantastic. Every once in a while, you just have to stop and watch things that go around you. And on that note, how come nobody's ever made Rick's Cafe as a real place? Like, I would love to go to that. I know that early next year, they're going to open the Cantina, a replica of the Cantina in Los Angeles. So it just is weird that no one's ever tried to open a replica of the cafe from Casablanca. It might be difficult because in the movie, the architecture changes in every scene. There's not a definitive look to the cafe. It's whatever they needed for the shot because walls are there and then they're not and that sort of thing. But it would be very cool to go to a real version of it. You know, and I would like to ride the Great Movie Ride in Florida just to see their homage to it. What a great movie. If I leave you with anything today, it's go watch Casablanca. Oh my God, go watch Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid. Of all the gin joints in all the world, she had to walk into mine. So many great lines of dialogue, you know, right at the usual suspects. This could be the start of a beautiful friendship, you know. Great movie. Thanks, Hendel, for a great movie experience. Can't wait to see what you pick next. And thanks for tuning in. I'm Jeff Tucker. Thanks for tuning in. I am the voice, and the show is 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?
All right, folks, I know I finished the episode. I wrapped it up, and we played the credits and everything, but this is the after credits part of the show because I know a guy who is an expert on... Let's see, okay, if I say, like, this is my friend Scott Ratner. Say, hey, Scott.
Hey.
All right, Scott is an expert on vintage classic movies. So if I say that my expertise begins at 75 and goes to current day, where would you say yours goes?
Oh, I'd say it starts probably early talkies. It's a much shorter period. I'd say it probably starts at about 1932, probably ends about 1949.
So 32 to 49. But like I was explaining earlier in the show, they made a lot more movies back then.
Right.
We don't know them because they don't last.
Right.
The studio was cranking out picture after picture after picture.
Especially in the 30s.
Right. Because there was only one shot at making money on these in the theatrical run.
Right.
There was no TV, no video, no DVD, nothing. Absolutely. Just it's in the theaters, it makes money, and then it's done. And
it was a cheap entertainment, and since they had nothing else and people were going through the Depression, they needed something to cheer them up, and so motion pictures was a cheap way.
How often did they switch pictures in theaters?
That I don't know. I think it's probably dependent upon which theaters, you know.
If it was making money.
If it was making money, it would last a long time.
But some of the most beloved movies that we know, Wizard of Oz.
Right.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
Casablanca. Well, Casablanca did well.
Casablanca did very well.
But like those other movies that I mentioned, they bombed.
Yeah.
The original theatrical release was a complete stinkeroony.
Yeah.
And
well, I think also they always polarize these opinions. It's a Wonderful Life, I've heard, open soft, as they say.
Open soft.
It didn't do nearly as well as they expected. It wasn't a total bomb, but considering the expectations, it was a bomb.
But when people watch it now, you can't even imagine that somebody would watch It's a Wonderful Life and not fall in love with it.
Well,
it's nearly a perfect movie.
If you take it, I love it. I know people who don't love that film, but at the same time, you're right. It is a very beloved film, and it's known now. Whereas the most successful film of that year was actually the most successful film of the entire decade of the 40s. And it's The Best Years of Our Lives, which is a good film, but most people don't know it.
Well, that's because, to be fair, It's a Wonderful Life fell into public domain.
Right.
And a lot of TV stations with nothing to air in the holidays just started airing it over and over because there were no residuals, no payments to pay, no rental fees.
Right. But that doesn't guarantee success either, because there are a lot of things in public domain that have not done really well. Yeah.
But a lot of public domain is schlock. Yes. This one was because somebody somewhere didn't sign a document.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so it's done very well through that, to the point where actually public domain was hurting it for a while because of the schlocky copies and the fact that we had an overexposure to it for a while.
Yeah, And
I think it's balanced off, but now it's got a foothold that will stay, I think.
Yeah, there was a time where if you went to buy It's a Wonderful Life, you had to make sure you were getting a studio copy, or you would get a copy of a copy of a copy.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the movie I just reviewed on the show,
Right.
one of the greatest movies of all time,
Right.
Casablanca.
All right.
Now, I admitted at the beginning I am not an expert.
All right.
And
I'm not probably either.
But I'm not looking for that. Just looking for you know more about it than I do.
All right.
I reviewed it superficially as a movie. I give it incredibly high ratings because I think it's a masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, yeah, the effects of the plane at the end are wonky, but you overlook it because I said on the review, by that time I was already crying.
Yeah.
Because Rick has done the ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
Not only to save Laszlo's life and Ilsa's, but his own, really.
Right. Well, also, and I think of one of the smart things about the film, sometimes I look at films and think about their savviness in terms of audience appeal. It makes you cry, but it's one of these win-win situations because nobody really loses. I mean, outside of the major villain.
Right, where he gets shot and dies.
He gets shot and dies.
But there's no love lost for a Nazi getting shot. Nobody cares.
And he is, Conrad Veidt is playing an ultra-villainous Nazi. He's not even trying to make him... He's trying to make him... Also because Conrad Veidt, like a lot of the European immigrants at that time, the Jewish immigrants, whatever, would love playing Nazis as ultimate villains because
so he's
nobody
Jewish.
hated. Well, I believe Conrad Veidt. I don't know if he was Jewish. I believe his wife was Jewish, and he had based.
And this movie was made at the height of World War II.
Yes,
at the height of it.
When you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
you had no idea. At
There's
that
no
point.
outcome yet.
You have no outcome yet. You just know that we got to fight the good fight. And this was made, one of the reasons this film works, in a lot of people's opinion, and I would agree too, is that a lot of the people in the cast were exiles, were people who were pushed out of, so that when evidently the story is that when they sang the Marseillaise, they were...
that's real emotion.
That's real emotion. These people were in tears.
They're drowning out the Nazis.
They were drowning out the Nazis, and these people had lost family, and these people had also had, the French people had lost their France to the Nazis.
Now, see, I didn't pick up all of that. That's why I asked you to come and interview, because you know a lot more about the film than I do.
One thing I think about the film, and this is not putting it down, I think one of the reasons for its success, I consider it the macaroni and cheese of classic cinema. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as it's the comfort food.
Oh, no, I totally agree.
Because I think actually there are people who will watch it for the first time and will be a little disappointed because of the fact that it's not the most exciting film they've ever seen. And it's not the most romantic in a normal sense.
No.
The romance between Rick and Ilsa is very nice, but it's not one of the great romances. But it's romantic in a different way. It's a romantic in everybody's romance with idealism, the idea that people have a lost idealism and they find it again.
Right. No, I think Rick and Ilsa's relationship is so important in the context of the film.
Right.
Because it's unrequited.
Right.
It's because, like, if she had met him at the train station, they would have had an ordinary relationship.
Right.
But the fact that she stiffed him has ruined him because he had built her up so much in his head.
Right.
So much so, like, I talked about one of my favorite moments is when she walks in the bar and you see Sam's reaction.
Right.
And Sam is like, the S is about to hit the fan.
Right.
And I love that. But you only get that on a second or third viewing.
Right.
Because the first time you don't know what's going on.
And the film and its characters become like old friends.
Yeah, I've always said that about great movies.
And I think that, and particularly in a film like this where it's a comfort, for me it's a personal film. It's a great film to fall asleep to. And I don't mean that as an insult either.
No, I mean
you put it on, and you're just comforted. And
that's the ultimate compliment.
And you just feel warm, and because also, as I say, it's a sacrifice film, but not a sacrifice film, because at the end, the good and slightly less interesting, the virtuous and slightly less interesting characters, Laszlo and Ilsa, they're very virtuous characters, but they're not quite as fun.
Laszlo is so goody-good as to be boring.
Right. And she's not, even though she's not as boring, she's not given as much. She doesn't have the cynicism that Rick has, and she isn't a wise ass like he is, and like Claude Rains are.
Yeah, I went on and on about how good their snappy dialogue is.
Yes.
And what's great about it is they never stop and go, look how clever we're being.
No.
The movie just keeps going.
And
so half the time you miss it.
And they belong together. And, I've heard even there so many different kind of interpretations, and one of them is even a homosexual interpretation of their relationship. I don't believe that at all, personally.
I didn't get that.
I don't buy that. But at the same time, they do belong together, as they are two guys. They are the two wise guys who are going to go off from now on. And they're going to go to bed with a lot of women, and they're going to do what they do. But at the same time, they are now they're not going to lose that wise ass slight cynicism about human nature. But especially Rick, has gained a sense of idealism and of purpose. They're going to fight on the good side from now on. Rick stuck his neck out for nobody before.
He says it like 6 times in the movie.
But
I don't stick my neck out for anybody.
That's not true anymore. That's not true by the end of because of Ilsa showing back up. But because now they'll always have Paris. Because of that, he will go out. He'll still just be as cynical about individual human beings, but about what he should do. That has changed. And also the line he says to when he says to Reno about, I thought it was a good time to change, to join the fight.
Yeah, sure.
And Reno looks at the bottle of the Vichy water, and says, I guess you're right, or me too.
He puts it in the trash.
They both decided, okay, from now on, we're not just for ourselves.
Right. Well, at that moment, they've both made a sacrifice and a pathway.
Right.
Rick has shot the commandant and put Elsa on the plane. That's done.
That's done.
And Claude Rains has decided that he's stepped up. He's not going to kowtow to the Nazis anymore because he's been kowtowing the whole movie.
Right.
And he's going to let this guy die. They're never going to solve the crime. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Nobody cares about this guy. Like, I don't think he didn't. Like, it's obvious that Peter Lorre didn't kill the couriers, and yet they let him hang for it anyways because it just ends that problem.
I don't know if he didn't kill the couriers. I'm not sure.
You think he did?
I'm not convinced of that.
I don't think he had the balls to do it.
Well, maybe he didn't. I'm not sure. But I do know that I agree entirely that they have now made a sacrifice. But in each cases, their sacrifices, they're the kind of sacrifices they can be happy with.
Well, because they're necessary. Because Rick is stuck being that guy because he never got resolution from his relationship with Ilsa.
And
now it's done.
Now it's done.
Not only is she's come back, she's got a husband, he is close. He sent her off to America. We're done.
And, as he says, they'll always have Paris. Which means something.
And he means it.
He means it. It's not just, I can't have her and so I got to get rid of her.
No. We had our moment.
We had our moment, and he will cherish that moment.
Yeah.
And that moment's going to stay with him.
And that's a real human thing to say, look, it didn't work out. We're adults. We had that moment in time that we both needed each other, and now it's over with.
And to be honest, if it doesn't mean anything, if we throw it out entirely, then we have to decide basically that nothing in our life up to that moment is worth anything. And that's not true.
No.
I mean, obviously, we need to live for the present
we are
and the future.
And of the things that we do.
We are the collection, and if they're good things, we should keep them.
Yeah.
We should keep them, and that's one of the things. They do keep it. So it's it works very well in that way. I think it also works well, it's got more honest-to-goodness wit in that film than many of the most esteemed classic comedies.
I agree with you because watching it, you're sort of sold that it's this somber World War II. We got to get out of. It's funny because Casablanca is a very romantic city,
right?
And the irony is that everybody is desperately trying to get out of Casablanca,
right?
But if you just watch it with that idea, you're going to miss it because. Damn, it's a funny movie.
Oh yeah,
man, is it funny?
Well, it's because
the quips are so quick,
and that's one of the great things. I think other people have mentioned this several times is that it comes out of a tradition of that particular studio. Warner Brothers was the City Studio. It was the Wise Guy Studio. It was Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Rick and Bugs Bunny are not that far apart from each other.
They've been in cartoons together.
Yeah, exactly.
Pardon me, my friend. Would you help a man who's down on his luck?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So the fact is they've got these characters who are born of that tradition of Warner Brothers from the start of the talkies, maybe prior to that, but definitely from the start of the talkies, it was the Wise-Ass Studio. And that stays in here, but it's not just a Wise-Ass film. It's a Wise-Ass film in which Wise-Ass characters make sacrifices that wouldn't hold up today.
Well, they're Wise-Asses because what's the alternative? The alternative is misery 24 hours a day.
Right. They're Wise-Ass in the same way the characters in MASH, let's say.
What is the... Yeah, exactly. Right. What does the bartender say about, I love you, but he does something...
But he pays me.
Yes.
I love you, Yvonne, but he pays me.
That's a great line. Now, what's your favorite funny line of the movie? Because I already said mine on the show. It's, I am shocked that there's gambling going on here. Yeah, you're winning, sir.
I think, well, I've got a couple of them. One is, are my eyes really brown?
Oh, yeah.
Are my eyes brown?
Yes, that's a really funny line.
And, there's so many. Oh, I think, Ricky, that is my least vulnerable spot.
Oh, yes.
I have a gun pointed directly.
Shooting in the heart?
That's my least vulnerable spot.
Yes.
But there's so many. It's hard to choose from. But again, they come from the same place, like all great films. The comic lines come from the same place as the serious lines.
Oh, yeah, no, they're all from honesty. Nobody's joking just to joke.
Right. And because of that, also, it gives some credibility to idealism. In the sense that if idealism was only given to you in this film by characters like Victor Laszlo, the film today would seem very dated because it would all be just patriotic idealism. But if you have cynical characters...
It balances it.
It balances it, and also
like I said, he's too much of a white knight.
Well, it's a bit of the screenwriter's fault, and they tried to do a little with it, and I don't think he played it badly.
No, Laszlo has no depth. He is perfect through and through. Even when he finds out his wife's been stepping out with this guy, he's like, yeah, it's okay with me.
Well, I think it's less a lack of depth. It's the fact is when you don't give somebody humor, you automatically take out...
You dehumanize them.
You dehumanize them a little bit. And if you don't give them... And not only humor, but also that they're in on the joke, that they are the jokester. And even Elsa gets that in a couple spots. She gets not much, but she goes, your secret is safe with me. You know, she gets a couple of quips.
I heard she was difficult on this film. That they had trouble getting her to...
Maybe.
They did do takes again and again and again to get it right.
I haven't heard that, but it may be very true. I do know that she was very uncomfortable during the film because she really wasn't given a lot of information on where it was going. And as we say, the film was successful, but it was successful in the way a successful film comes out. In other words, it was a film came out and it's a success... And I know I'm changing subjects a little here.
No, it's fine. No, this is how film talk goes.
It did not come out as a gangbusters, the film of the year.
It was just another picture in the roster.
Another picture and did well. And towards the end of the year, there was enough talk for it that because it really, had a long time for gestation before the Academy Awards because it actually came out in 42 and it had all of 43. Because it came out in 42, but didn't meet the criteria of which theaters it has to play for. It has to play in New York for however long to be considered. So, and they purposely did that, I think. But then they didn't release it again until early 43, I believe. And then, but it had all that time to build up the talk. And I don't think at the time they even thought that it was going to. They were proud of it because it was a good film. Not because it was something amazing, and
there's no spectacle in it. It's not a Busby Berkeley movie. There's no special effects in it. And it's just a really tight story about a guy getting redemption.
And also, it wasn't the important film either.
Exactly.
There's the different departments of what wins. Sometimes it's the important film. Well, sure, it's on the good side, but every film that mentioned the war is is on the right side
Sure,
there. So
right,
it really
right,
wasn't, it's not a war
But
film. It's not a
it
film.
wasn't considered a prestige picture.
It was not considered a prestige picture. And it was a good...
And a lot of movies that come out as prestige pictures are garbage anyways, because they're reaching too high. And instead of just making a good movie, they're so worried about getting the award ceremony correct, they forget to... It's got to start with a good movie.
Or even the ones that are good somehow lose their power because of certain things. Best Years of Our Lives, as I mentioned before, is as good a film as it ever was, and it is a very good film.
That's about going to war and coming home, right?
That's the coming home. Yes,
okay.
This is the after the guys. It all takes place, and it's how they deal with it. And
so let me ask you this.
What?
Is this Bogart's best role?
Oh, I'm not enough of a Bogart aficionado to be able to tell you. I don't think so. I mean, it's probably my favorite of his films, but a lot of people who really know Bogart well would say no.
Right.
They would say, a lot of them would say Maltese Falcon.
I say Maltese Falcon.
Maltese Falcon. And a lot of people say things like In a Lonely Place, which is more obscure a little bit. But I think...
How great is Peter Lorre in this?
Peter Lorre's great. Peter Lorre doesn't have a lot to do in it, but
I mean, it's one of those roles that's so memorable.
Even though it's very funny because he gives the wrong reading of a line.
Oh, does he really?
I think the line is Peter Lorre. The line as he reads it, "You hate me, don't you?" Obviously is said as if he's not only expects an affirmative answer, but that he wants one.
Right, instead of...
You hate me, don't you?
Yeah, no, I get that, yeah.
And that's really
funny. The inflection's on the wrong words.
The inflection's on the... Yeah, exactly. But outside of that...
And what does he say?
I would if I gave you any thought. I'm probably misquoting.
It's such a great line. It's such a great line, though, because it's even worse. The answer is even worse than Lorre was expecting.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, because I hate you, at least you'd have something to deal with. But now let's say it's nothing. Yeah.
Hate implies I care.
I care, yeah.
What about the chubby guy that runs the bar? Where do I know him from?
SC Zakal. Everything.
He's great.
Cuddles, they called him. Cuddles Zakal. He was a basic mainstay at Warner's during that time. He plays I'm trying to think of... I don't know really
great character actor.
He's the producer who produces George M. Cohan's musical in Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Okay.
I always think of him first from a Danny Kaye film, Wonder Man, in which he's the whole like a Pine at Prospect Park thing. But he's very funny, and he was one of those beloved character actors.
Yeah.
So quite a few of them. Leonid Kinski was Sasha the bartender.
He's great. Yeah, he's great. The Russian.
He's the Russian. He's oddly enough, I think Michael Curtiz didn't like what he was doing. He thought he was overplaying it, but I thought he's great.
No, I think he balances out great.
He's in several of my favorite films, including Trouble in Paradise. One of probably my favorite.
You've talked about that a lot to me.
And he's in Duck Soup too. He's in a lot of things, great things. But and who else do you have? Do you have
Sidney Greenstreet?
Sidney Greenstreet.
Did you know he's the bassist for Jabba the Hutt?
Did not know that.
Yeah, they even sculpted one with a fez.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Lucas kept saying again and again. I talked earlier in the show that Casablanca influenced Star Wars in so many ways.
Oh, yeah.
The Cantina wouldn't exist without Rick's American Cafe.
Absolutely.
Cafe American. And same with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, it's just such a seminal film with the look and the underbelly and the dark side of traveling to these exotic places.
Right.
And it's weird. It's created a mystique that life can never live up to.
I think Raiders also is a very good equivalent for Casablanca in terms of the level. When Raiders came out, people loved it. It was a popular film. But I don't think people knew that it would have the legacy that it has.
Oh, no, not at all.
In other words, it was a good film. It was directed by Spielberg, top director.
Right, no. But Spielberg and Lucas both agreed it was just a B picture.
It was a very well made.
It was made, you know how it was made? It was made to prove that Spielberg could bring a movie on budget, on schedule, after the two prone hit of Close Encounters and 1941.
Yeah. Well,
he was determined to bring it because he thought his career was over.
But even when it came out, it was very successful, and people liked it. But I think they liked it on the same level they liked Casablanca. It was a successful film of its year. Even if it would have been an odd run to make at that time to make Best Picture, but it was not an impossibility.
Oh, yeah, no.
It was not an impossibility.
You look back now and you go, gosh, it should have won Best Picture. It's that good.
Yeah.
It's like wine. It gets better with age.
Exactly. But at the same time, it did well, and you knew it would be a film that people would like for years, but you didn't necessarily know that when a lot of other films of its era were, were forgotten.
Yeah.
I talk
a lot about that you'd be shocked to know how many movies come out that are just lost.
Yeah.
People just don't care about because they don't
Great ones
last.
and bad ones.
Oh, yeah.
Great ones and bad ones.
Sure.
And a lot of that has to do with exposure, too. I think that right now Warner Brothers, MGM, and RKO films are more beloved right now because of classic films than Paramount, Universal, and Columbia, just because people have seen them more.
Yeah, sure.
Outside of, let's say, the Universal horror films.
Yeah,
right. I think the Paramount, I think the greatest film year any studio ever had was Paramount in 1932. But those films have slowly been able, because they are such great films, they've slowly been released, but it hasn't been the thing like the MGM film, which Turner had the package, so they could, so...
Have you ever seen the awful colorized version of Casablanca?
Yeah, I have.
Even the people who made it and worked on it said it added nothing to the enjoyment of the film.
Well, especially that film. I mean, I don't, there are films that you generally would watch these colorized films because I'm interested to see what it looks like.
I'm curious, too.
I'm curious.
But Casablanca is about shadow and darkness.
And in some cases, it belonged. I mean, if Yankee Doodle Dandy had been made in color, it would probably be...
It'd still be around. It would be played.
It would be played more than it is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Yankee Doodle Dandy still does fairly well. But
I'm trying to explain to my teenage kids how great this movie Casablanca is and how much it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. And they go, is it in black and white? I said, yeah, they have no interest.
Right.
Zero.
And if they see it the first time, they'll probably say, wait a minute, this is not like Raiders. It doesn't have nearly the action. As I say, it's not one of the most exciting films.
No.
It's not one of the most intense films.
But see, I would, a little bit of an argument there because I think in the last 30 or 40 minutes, the tension is so high.
Oh, it is.
They got to get out. And Rick keeps making these choices that seem so selfish at the time, but you don't realize he's planning 2 steps ahead to get them out.
Or towards the end, they're selfish, but you're not exactly sure. You're not exactly sure. The moment in which Reno picks up the phone and gives the order, but you realize now he's calling Strasser.
Calling the Nazi.
Calling the Nazi. You're all of a sudden saying, wow. Because at that time, he hasn't committed.
Right, no.
I mean,
Nazis...
He hates Strasser. I mean, it goes to show. I think Reno, one of the great things about Reno is, and I think it applies to the world today very strong, is the fact that we tend to polarize. If we're on one political party, the other political party, we see the straw man other side of being ridiculous.
Right.
And both sides. But the fact is...
life doesn't work that way.
It's not. And it's very complex right now where people are voting for candidates they really can't stand because...
They really can't stand the other one.
Because they really can't stand the other one. And that's always true, I guess, but I'd say even more so today. But the fact is, that... I mean, early on, Reno says something about maybe you'd bet this just because you don't like Strasser's face. Frankly, I don't either.
Yeah. The bet between them whether he's going to get out.
Whether that Reno can't stand Strasser. But Reno is an opportunist, and Reno has lived his life looking after himself. And I think that's different. Reno has lived his whole life looking after himself. Rick has lived his early life probably being an idealist because he ran the guns to Ethiopia.
He did great things before he got ruined in Paris.
Exactly. And then basically said, I'm out for myself.
And what do you think the catalyst is there? Do you think that Rick assumes she's dead? Or that she got cold feet? Or does it matter?
Oh, I don't think...
It's never mentioned. He never looks at her and goes, I thought you were dead. He doesn't ever say that.
No, I don't think he thinks she's dead. I think
You think he thinks that she just stiffed him?
She stiffed
which
him.
is even worse.
I think it's kind of what he says when he asks her, "Did you just think it was not worth the risk, that it was not safe being around me, and you didn't love me enough,
right?
To not only take the risk of going with me, but not even telling me."
Right, and then he makes that realization that she was with him even though she was married.
Right.
And that now that the husband's back, this is what I got to do. It's the same kind of, have you ever seen League of Their Own?
Yes.
It's the same kind of weird love thing between Tom Hanks and Gina Davis where we just assume they're going to get together. And
right.
then her husband shows up and she's like, well, I'm leaving now.
Yeah.
Because this is what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
And you can't be mad at me because I was very honest that I have a husband and this is what I want to do.
Right. And you look at the film and you could look at so many ways they could have gone wrong with the film. And probably so many ways they did go wrong with the film that we don't care about. That are just choices.
Oh yeah, no. A movie this good, you can overlook. Problems.
You can overlook.
Like I read online, if you really study it, the cafe never has a definitive ground plan. They just keep changing it to what they need for the shots.
And there's also the whole thing about the MacGuffin of the whole plot is based on
a myth about signed papers.
About signed papers.
Transit papers.
Transit papers, which I've heard. Now, this is an interesting story that they've recently, and it goes to show our mindset, confirmation bias, because people have said for years it doesn't make sense because Peter Lorre's character, you see I'm talking to you now, I'm forgetting even characters' names, but Peter Lorre's character says that that these are letters of transit signed by de Gaulle, and they cannot be rescinded. Well, a lot of people say it's not. He never says de Gaulle. He says Végon, who was a leader, and I don't know my history well enough, so
yeah, I don't know.
Hopefully, nobody will listen to this and say, "Oh, he doesn't know anything," but that would have some
clout.
And if you listen to it, you watch it, it sounds first like he's going, because we're used to thinking it's de Gaulle.
But it doesn't really matter because in the context of the story, we just need to know that these are the most valuable pieces of paper.
Right.
And it doesn't matter.
And you have to bypass this.
Because at one point, somebody waves a paper in front of Rick's face, and he just rips it up.
Well, it's a check.
That's what it is.
It's his check.
He just throws the guy out.
He just throws the guy from the Deutsche Bank. Yeah, because obviously he's out for himself, but that doesn't take away all of his principles, and he cannot stand Nazism.
Sure, yeah.
He's not going to do anything about it at the start, because
what did they say? What will you do when the Nazis invade New York?
Ask me when they get there.
Yeah, ask me when they get there. He goes, I would advise them against going into somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great parts of New York.
It's a great series of dialogue.
But yeah, no, it's that. But what's great about it is all of the lines, as funny as they are totally consistent with this attitude, which is he's not lying to them. He's not lying to them at the start when he says, I'm a cafe owner, I've got my business, I'm paying attention to it. They may think he is, and later on they'll be right, because later on he is committed to the Allies. But early on, it is none of his business, and he doesn't care. He hates the Nazis, but he's not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, but he hates everybody, apparently. I mean, he hates the Nazis, yes.
He hates Nazis. And
at the beginning, they're all talking about wanting to have a drink with him, and when they pan over, you think, well, God, who is important enough to be having a drink with Rick? He's playing chess with nobody.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's another great, subtle...
Right.
The way the story is told through visual.
Yeah. He's got nobody in his life anymore. He doesn't care about anybody except himself. He said, it's all for me. If someone were to ask him, say, there's a dice toss here, it can go to to what we all accept now is the good side or the bad side.
Yeah.
He would go for the good side, but he's not going to stick his neck out.
No.
He's not going to, until later on, because at the end, he's making big sacrifices. First of all, he's not only giving up Ilsa, which is still a possibility, because if he said go with me, she'd go with him.
Well, yeah, she confesses her love in no uncertain terms after pulling a gun on him.
Right. So he not only gives up her, but he also gives up his personal safety, because, at the end, he's a wanted man.
He's a wanted man. He sells the club. But he knows that if he does these series of events, they're going to take it away from him anyways. They're
going to take it away from him anyway, but at the same time, he also knows, though, that he's going to go out and he's shot this man, and we can take it lightly, but the fact is he's probably a hunted man for a few years.
Oh, definitely.
And so he's giving up a lot. And that's a lot to give. That's a big change from somebody who
says, I'm not
didn't give a crap about anybody.
But those are what the best stories are. Is a character starts out one way, sees life a definitive way, something happens to change his outlook, and he changes his ways for the better.
Right.
That's cinema. Those are the best stories. Are that storyline.
But the nice thing about it, as I say, what's legitimized is the fact that he is going to. He does not become the totally different person. He's still the wise ass.
He's still a cynical wise ass.
He's still a cynical wise ass.
But he's going to do it on his terms.
He's going to do it on his terms, and he's going to do it for. He's got a fight now.
Yeah.
Besides him.
A fight worth fighting.
A fight worth fighting. And as everybody says, it's a lot easier, it's a lot healthier, it's a better life to fight the fight worth fighting that's not just about you.
So let's extrapolate. Let's speculate. Laszlo gets shot, and he gets on the plane with Elsa, and the last shot is them flying off into the fog. Still a classic?
Not nearly as much.
No, I don't think so.
Not nearly as much.
It's the sacrifice that makes it so darn good.
And I will say, there are a lot of people talk about that, about a lot of classic films, and say, if it had done this, it would have totally not worked. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of cases, I don't believe that. As a matter of fact, in the casting, as good as the casting is, I can't think of anybody as good as Claude Rains in his role. And most of the
flawless.
But at the same time, there are a few people as great as Cuddles the Call is. If you had given someone else that role, they might have been great too.
Sure.
There were a lot of ways they could have done things. They could have done things differently. It still would have been great. So I don't think, and as I say, there are classic films people look at. My example always is, I think the film, as much as people love it, The Man Who Came to Dinner, the 1941 film Man Who Came to Dinner, I think is almost half the cast is miscast, including the one everybody talks about, Monty Woolley being as, Sheridan Whiteside, being all this great. I think they could have done better in almost half of these things. So I think there are things, if you had replaced other aspects of Casablanca, I think it would have been, maybe we wouldn't feel the loss, or maybe it would have been better in a couple ways.
Yeah, well, who
knows?
Woulda, coulda, shoulda. You're never going to know.
But I think
that's like seeing Eric Stoltz as Marty McFly. Until they show us the whole thing, we don't know.
Exactly. But if that change you're talking about had been made, no, it wouldn't have worked. Because if you think about it, everything is about this man's. It's not he lost his girlfriend. It's he lost his idealism.
Yeah.
And that is what has to be regained. And you cannot regain that if he goes off with her.
And isn't it interesting, a movie that comes out at this time, 42, is telling everybody, make the sacrifice for the good. Fight for the good guys. Even if it means losing the girl you love. Enlist. It almost should just say enlist at the end.
Oh, yeah.
There are people in the lobby right now willing to take your number.
But there are a lot of films from that time, and I've seen a lot of them, that are very... someone described it as once, they're hot films. They're hot films. They say, they put it out there and they give this powerful message about this. They're generally very serious too.
Yeah.
And they're they're solemn about it.
Yeah,
and
people don't respond to that.
And they make it
strong. You gotta
strong.
have the comedy.
And to be honest, some of these films are more exciting on the sense of there's more action and there's more, but someone said this film instead is cool. And all of a sudden you look at this guy and go, this is the cool guy.
Yeah.
This is, and Reno and Rick offer major coolness.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you see the awful Kingdom of the Crystal Skull movie?
No.
The last Indiana Jones movie?
No.
They in the dialogue mentioned that he was a spy during World War II. You know, because he had all these adventures, and then because the war started, Indiana Jones became a spy and had all these adventures. And I'm like, whatever they're talking about is 10 times better than the crappy story they're telling right now.
Well, I remember a theater director once told me that that whatever you do as you start leaving stage, remember that the big party is off stage.
Yeah.
Is off stage, and make it look like that and lead out to that. And that always leads it whatever. And the great thing is you get an idea from this film, as wonderful as this film is, there's a big party afterwards. And I'm glad it was never filmed.
Right.
Because I don't think they could have found a way to make it work. Because to be honest, once he has his mission again.
Well, thankfully there's no sequel.
Yeah.
We don't need a sequel to this movie.
And they did try.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Did.
But instead of they were smart. Instead of making sequels, they made films like it.
Yeah.
To Have and Have Not.
Right
across
alongside.
the Pacific.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those films, and none of them, in my opinion, some people like to have and have not more than Casablanca. None of them work as well for me, but at the same time, they do work. But if you had Brazzaville, which I believe is the name of the sequel.
You're exactly right.
And
the other one is early 90s called Havana with Robert Redford. It's a complete Casablanca ripoff.
Yeah. But it's hard to do. As I say, I'm an enthusiast. I'm not that much. I mean,
you certainly know a lot more than I do.
There are a lot of, well, I don't know, but there are films that everybody loves or that are highly esteemed, which in some cases very good films that don't speak to me as much.
Oh yeah, no, I watch movies, like I inhale them,
right.
And some people will go, "This is a very well regarded. You gotta love." It's terrible.
Or sometimes you look at it and go, "It's very good. It just doesn't speak to me." And there are all levels of it. A Maltese Falcon, which is, I think, a great film, doesn't speak to me on the level Casablanca does.
It doesn't have the heart.
Doesn't have the heart.
It doesn't have the heart of Casablanca.
It's got a lot of humor.
Yeah, but not the heart.
It doesn't have the heart, and it just doesn't. I don't revisit it as much. I respect it.
Like I had never seen Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Right.
And I put it on, and I was enthralled at how good it was.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how good it was.
That's an interesting film too in terms of perception. When it came out, it was very highly rated. It's actually been kind of dissed in the years since as being too soapy and also saying, look at how obvious a thing they make. They say, I remember somebody saying the problem, the question of this film, it's a problem film. The problem is, would you allow your bubble-headed daughter
to marry this amazing man?
Whatever. And, or would you wonder why he'd be interested in her in the first place?
Everything they tell you about him is better than the previous thing. You're like, I want to marry him.
And exactly. And
he's Sidney Poitier.
And Sidney Poitier, who lives up to all that. Yeah. Who's is that. And so there are problems with it, but at the same time, it really does. I think it's very effective. A lot of people don't like that film. I find it very effective. And some people think it's just this whole talk piece, which it is a talk piece. It's all a whole bunch of conversations, but they work for me. But yeah, that's a film that speaks to you. It speaks to me.
Yeah.
Other films don't. Casablanca really speaks to me, and it speaks to me because of the fact that every time I watch it, it has grown more a part of me. And all those little catchphrase lines.
Are the subtleties.
The catchphrase lines are great catchphrase lines, but they're not just catchphrase lines.
They're
catchphrase lines. They have real good meaning.
They have weight.
And when people talk about callbacks.
When he says, "Here's looking at you, kid," at the end for the last time.
Right.
That's when I was like, I've lost it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. And the fact is, I think to me, there's only one other film that uses what I call them just running gags. People call them callbacks now, I guess, whatever. But as well, and that's Billy Wilder's 1, 2, 3, which annoys a lot of people. That film really annoys people, and I got to admit, it's certainly not as emotionally. I think it's a hilarious film, but it uses in the same way. It uses this line one way, this line again this way, and all of a sudden means different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really a great film for reusing things, and all of a sudden they mean something. They mean something. Round up the usual suspects. Used at the start of the film, and used at the second to show that is in that one line. That is the turning point of the film in terms of, is he going to get away with it? It is also the point at which you suddenly see that Reno has made a commitment to the good side.
Yep. Oh yeah, Round Up the Usual Suspects means Rick didn't do it.
Exactly.
Even though I watched him do it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Scott. Your insight is valuable.
Thank you.
So I always end the show a certain way. I always go 91 reasons. That's how I end the show. Right. Can you do it as Peter Lorre?
Oh, sure.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons.
That's it.